in on that one. That's usually where people will go for PRs, right? Personal records. Next, we go into tempo. What tempo is the speed at which you execute a lift. Now, you will see a ton of people going into the gym, lifting really heavy, and I mean, if that works for them, great, but there's a lot of benefits to actually prioritizing and emphasizing tempo, and we're going to go over it here. So I worked with one of my mentors, Stefan Kazal. He taught me the importance of tempo and how you can manipulate it to increase time under tension to achieve optimal gains. Not only does it do that, right, it will also improve optimal tendon and ligament strength, which is going to prevent injuries. It's going to help with increasing muscle fiber recruitment. This is especially important for people who are newer to the gym, or even if they're just hopping back into the working out. It's also going to increase your motor unit control. It's going to improve quality reps, and it's going to create a harder training stimulus. This means you will be able to use less weight while you are prioritizing tempo. The reason that's important because over time, we do want to be increasing weight, but there's going to get to a point where you can't increase weight that much more because the body can only take so much. So if you start by prioritizing tempo, it expands that room and that period of time that you could actually create a hard training stimulus, which means you have a longer period of time that you'll be able to actually get results, right? Okay, so this is where we're going to go into the phases of a rep. Two phases, like I said, the concentric phase and the eccentric phase. The concentric phase is the contracting or the squeezing. This is typically when you are going to push or you are pulling in a workout. So you're fighting against gravity for this one. So for a squat, a concentric phase would be the push up, right? You're driving up. And then the example with the fighting against gravity, right? Gravity is pulling the weight down towards the ground, and you're pushing the weight up, meaning you're moving against gravity. Same thing with like a shoulder press, right? You have a dumbbell here. The concentric phase is going to be that drive up, or if you're doing like a row, the concentric phase is that pull, okay? The eccentric phase of a rep is the lengthening or the stretching. Typically, it's going to be when you are lowering, but it's not always, okay? So you are moving with gravity for this one. So in the squat, concentric is the drive up or the push up. The eccentric is the lowering down into the squat. Same thing with the shoulder press. Concentric is up, eccentric is the lowering. Now, it's not always a lowering for the row example, right? Concentric is the drive back. The eccentric would be returning back to that start position, okay? Another example would be like, let's say you have a lat pull down, right? So you have the bar here. The concentric phase would be the drive down because you're pulling down. The eccentric phase would be the returning back to normal. It's when you're lengthening, okay? So we're going to dive a little bit more into tempo because you're going to see tempo prescribed throughout your programming, and I want you to feel really confident in reading it because it can be fairly confusing, okay? I'm also going to be uploading a video on how to track your tempo and do it in a way that's less complicated because I know it's hard to like count reps and count tempo. But first, let's focus on even what tempo is and how to read it, right? So here's an example. We have a squat. Tempo here is 4-0-x-0. So the first number is the lowering or the eccentric phase of the lift, right? So for the squat, it's initiating the squat by lowering down. And we know that the first number here, right, is 4. Each number is represented for seconds. So we know the first number is the eccentric phase, and it's for 4 seconds. So you will initiate the squat by lowering down for a total of 4 seconds. After that, we have another number. Here is a 0. So the second number represented is how long you will pause at the bottom position of the squat. Here it's a 0, so that means there's no pause, right? It's just you lower down and then you go into the next one. So here we see an X. X is the third number, and that represents the concentric or the lifting portion of the squat. That says squat, but it's supposed to say squat. And the X represents to lift out as explosively as possible, right? X is explosive. So that third number, or here's the letter, is the concentric. So it's after you lower for 4 seconds, you don't pause at the bottom, you're going to explode on the way up, okay? So that's that push. Then the last number here is a 0. So the fourth number represents how long you will pause at the top of the movement. We're using a squat here, for example, so there is no pause because it's 0 seconds at the top of the squat. So the entire movement of this exercise in the tempo would be 4 seconds down, explode up. 4 seconds down, explode up, okay? I want to give you a couple more examples. Here we're going to use a lat pull down. The tempo is 2-0-2-0. First number we know is represented by the eccentric phase of the lift. Now, this is where it kind of varies. For the squat, imagine yourself bar on your back or goblet squat, whatever you're doing. What is the first thing you do? You lower, right? You initiate the movement by dropping down. When you are in a lat pull down, right? What is the first thing that you do? You grab the bar above the head, right? And you drive down. That drive down or that pull is actually the concentric, right? So the squat, you start with the eccentric. The lat pull down, you start with the concentric, okay? That means even though the first number represented here is 2, that is the eccentric phase. So we actually have to look at the third number represented for the concentric phase. So we know the third number represents the concentric or the lifting portion. So for this example, you will initiate the movement with this by pulling the handle down for 2 seconds. Okay, 2 seconds. Then, so we're actually starting here, right? We're starting at the third one. Because we're going to go to the fourth one next. The fourth number represents how long you will pause at the top of the movement. That should actually say the bottom of the movement. This would mean there is no pause at the bottom of the pull down, right? So you drive down, no pause, and then you have to jump back up here. The first number here is the eccentric phase of the lift. For the lat pull down, this represents bringing the handle back up for 2 seconds. So 2 seconds up. Then you go on to this second one. This represents the pause at the top of the pull down. Here there is no pause. So you just come right back down. So in total, right, you're going to start here with the concentric. You move down to the fourth, and then you come back up and follow here, okay? So it would look like 2 seconds down, no pause, 2 seconds up, no pause. 2 seconds down, no pause, 2 seconds up, no pause. All right, moving on to the next. So we have a seated cable row. This tempo here is 3-0-1-1. Now I want you to think. Your arms are grabbing the handle and you drive back. So what are you initiating the movement with? Are you initiating the movement with your concentric or your eccentric if you're pulling back? Okay, you're initiating with your concentric. So just like the lat pull down, we're going to start at the third number. Third number represents the concentric or the pulling portion. So for this example, you will initiate the movement with the third number by pulling the handle back towards you for only 1 second, right? Because as we can see, third number here is 1. Then the fourth number represents how long you will pause at the back of the movement. Here we have the number 1. This would mean there is only 1 second pause when your arms are all the way pulled back, okay? So 1 second drive, 1 second hold at the back. Then we go back to the top. The first number here is the eccentric phase. For the seated row, this represents bringing the handle back to the starting position for 3 seconds. So, again, concentric is how many? 1 second, followed with a 1 second pause and a 3 second return. So 1 second drive, 1 second pause, 3 seconds as you bring the weight or the handle back to the starting position. Then we go to the next one. Here is 0 seconds. So we know when our hands are fully stretched out at that start position, we don't pause and we just repeat. So what it would look like is 1 second drive, 1 second pause, 3 seconds, 1 second drive, 1 second pause, 3 second return, okay? And I know tempo can be a little bit complicated, but I want you to sit with this. You could also send some videos to me and ask for some guidance. There is going to be an additional video with how to track all of this while you track reps and how you can do it super easily, okay?